Of all the threats we faced during World War II, only one truly kept me awake at night. Winston Churchill didn't say this about the Blitz, not about Dunkirk, not even about the threat of Nazi invasion. He said it about U-boats. These submarines nearly accomplished what Hitler's armies couldn't, bringing Britain to its knees without ever setting foot on British soil. By 1943, Britain was just weeks away from starvation, and the weapon responsible was lurking beneath the Atlantic waves. This is the story of the Kriegsmarine's U-boat force, the Grey Wolves of the Atlantic, and how they came terrifyingly close to changing the outcome of World War II. When World War I ended, the Treaty of Versailles explicitly banned Germany from possessing submarines. The Allies remembered too well how U-boats had nearly starved Britain into submission during the Great War. But here's what they didn't account for: German ingenuity and deception. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, German engineers secretly designed submarines in the Netherlands and Finland, hiding their work behind front companies. They trained crews on fake research vessels. When Hitler came to power in 1933, he made submarine construction a priority. And when he openly defied the Treaty of Versailles in 1935, Germany already had a head start. The Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935 allowed Germany to build a submarine fleet up to 45% of the Royal Navy's tonnage. Hitler ordered his naval commander, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, to build the force that would strangle Britain's maritime lifeline. Dönitz had a plan, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. Traditional submarine tactics involved lone wolves hunting alone. Dönitz revolutionized this entirely. His concept? The Rudel tactic, wolfpack tactics. Here's how it worked. Multiple U-boats would spread across the Atlantic shipping lanes. When one submarine spotted a convoy, instead of attacking immediately, it would shadow the ships and radio their position to U-boat headquarters in France. Dönitz would then direct every submarine in the area to converge on the target. Then, under cover of darkness, they'd attack simultaneously from multiple directions. The convoys didn't stand a chance. Escort ships would rush to defend one side, while U-boats torpedoed merchant ships from another direction. It was coordinated chaos, and it was devastatingly effective. But before we continue, you need to understand what life was actually like aboard these boats. The Type 7 U-boat, the workhorse of the Kriegsmarine, was 67 meters long and carried a crew of 44 to 52 men. To call these vessels cramped would be a dramatic understatement. There were only enough bunks for half the crew. Men slept in shifts, sharing the same damp, smelly mattresses. The boat reeked of diesel fuel, unwashed bodies, rotten food, and mildew. Condensation constantly dripped from the ceiling. Fresh water was so limited that crew members couldn't bathe for entire patrols, lasting 6 to 8 weeks. Torpedoes were stored everywhere, including in the crew quarters. Men literally slept next to weapons that could explode if hit. Food was stored in every available space, including hanging from pipes above sleeping sailors. The psychological pressure was relentless. At any moment, depth charges from destroyers above could crush the hull like a tin can. The sound of enemy sonar pinging against the hull, ASDIC as the British called it, meant they'd been found. Crew members could only sit in terrified silence as explosions detonated around them, each blast potentially the last thing they'd ever hear. The casualty rate tells the story. Of approximately 40,000 men who served in U-boats during the war, nearly 30,000 never came home. A 75% casualty rate, the highest of any branch of the German military. They called them iron coffins for a reason. Despite the horrific conditions, the early war period saw unprecedented U-boat success. When France fell in June 1940, Germany gained access to Atlantic ports like Brest, Lorient, and Saint-Nazaire. U-boats no longer had to navigate around Britain to reach the Atlantic. They could operate directly from French bases. The period from June 1940 to February 1941 became known as Die glückliche Zeit, the happy time. British merchant ships sailed with minimal protection. Radar was primitive, sonar was unreliable, and Britain had too few escort vessels to protect every convoy. U-boat commanders became celebrities in Germany. Otto Kretschmer, known as Silent Otto, sank 47 ships totaling over 274,000 tons. Günther Prien became a national hero after sneaking into the British naval base at Scapa Flow and sinking the battleship HMS Royal Oak, killing 833 men. In 1941 alone, U-boats sank over 2 million tons of Allied shipping. Britain was bleeding, and Churchill knew it. But the Allies weren't sitting idle. The turning point came from multiple breakthroughs working together. First, Enigma. British codebreakers at Bletchley Park, led by Alan Turing, cracked the German Enigma cipher machine. This allowed the Allies to read encrypted U-boat communications and reroute convoys away from Wolfpack positions. Second, technology. Improved radar could detect surfaced U-boats at night. Long-range B-24 Liberator bombers closed the mid-Atlantic gap, the area beyond the range of land-based aircraft where U-boats had operated with impunity. The introduction of escort carriers brought air cover directly with the convoys. Third, tactics. Hunter-killer groups specifically targeted U-boats. These groups included destroyers, corvettes, and frigates equipped with improved sonar and depth charges. They didn't just defend convoys, they actively hunted submarines. And fourth, production. American shipyards began producing Liberty ships faster than U-boats could sink them. In 1943, the Allies launched over 3,000 merchant vessels. May 1943 marked Black May for the U-boat force. In a single month, Germany lost 43 U-boats. Dönitz was forced to temporarily withdraw his submarines from the North Atlantic entirely. The hunters had become the hunted. By war's end, the numbers tell a staggering story. German U-boats sank approximately 3,000 Allied ships, totaling around 14.5 million tons of shipping. Over 72,000 Allied sailors and merchant seamen died in the Atlantic. But Germany built 1,162 U-boats during the war. Of these, 785 were lost, nearly 70%. Of approximately 40,000 U-boat crew members, around 30,000 died, and another 5,000 were captured. These young men, many barely out of their teens, served in what was arguably the most dangerous military service of any nation during World War II. They fought with courage in a terrible cause, trapped in steel tubes beneath the ocean, knowing that their chances of survival diminished with each patrol. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous military campaign of World War II, lasting from 1939 to 1945. Churchill later wrote, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. Germany came frighteningly close to winning this battle. Had they succeeded in cutting off Britain's supply lines, D-Day might never have happened. Britain might have been forced to negotiate peace. The entire course of the war could have changed. The grey wolves of the Atlantic ultimately failed, but they proved that modern naval warfare would never be the same again." If you enjoyed this deep dive into World War II history, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.